Ladies and gentlemen, it's a tremendous privilege to be here speaking as UKIP's first ever Families and Children spokesperson. The family as you and I understand it, mum who's female, dad who's male and kids, has been under attack for half a century. The chattering classes and the hard left have dismissed it, have derided it, have mocked it, have said it exists from the 1950s. And yet actually those families are the very bedrock, healthy families are the very bedrock of a healthy society. And I'm really grateful that Gerard has asked me to become the champion of those families. I don't have time to go into the policies. You'll see some of the policies, preliminary policies that we've got in the manifesto, because there's something else that I want to get onto that's really quite important. But we will stand for that family. That does not mean that we ourselves mock, deride and dismiss other forms of domestic arrangement. We live in a democracy and people can choose it. But government policies, government discourse, government tax frameworks, government welfare frameworks at the moment are geared against the traditional family, and we will reverse that. We also will stand against further state intervention in the lives of our children. More and more, whether it's within the medical profession or whether it's an educational profession or whatever, the state is taking over rights that should properly belong to parents. We believe in parent power. The state and its agencies cannot provide that essential ingredient that all children need, which is parental love. The state cannot love our children. So we will start to roll that back too. Children belong first of all to their parents. And lastly, before I get into what I really want to talk about, I'd just like to say this, and it's something which my colleague David Curtin has been talking much more about, but I want to say this, that children are born male or female. They have XY or XX chromosomes. I consider it to be child abuse when adults go into prepubescent children in primary schools and try and get them to question whether they're actually born one way or the other. That is child abuse. But ladies and gentlemen, I don't have time to expand on that because I want to turn on to something which I believe is the biggest social crime and scandal in our country for 200 years. I'm talking about the decades of the abuse, grooming, assaulting, raping, drugging of underage girls up and down the country. I utterly condemn, but I am not talking about the dirty old man who waits down a dark alley and tries to abuse children like that, although, of course, we're absolutely against that. Neither am I talking about individuals who wait in their bedrooms and paedophiles who wait in their bedrooms and work through the internet. I'm talking about something which has happened outside schools, outside children's homes, in shopping malls, quite openly, in public, up and down the country, in town and city, up and down the country. It's happened just outside my own McDonald's, apparently, just in East End of London, where I live. What has happened over the last decades is nothing less than, I use this word advisedly, a holocaust. It has been a holocaust of our children, of our daughters. The level, if you look into this, if you meet and talk to some of the children, the level of bestiality and depravity that has been visited on these girls, most of them white English girls, not all, Sikh girls and others too, the level has been visited on them by the tens of thousands up and down the country is beyond belief. Some of you will have read in the Daily Mail just last Friday, a long article about a girl, I think they called her Sarah, not her real name, and they explained what had happened to her. And they said this was pretty appalling. I have met Sarah's family. I've been in their home. I've talked to them, a family broken by what's happened. I'm a father. Many of you are fathers. Can you imagine how that father there felt? He was a broken man by what had happened to his daughter. And when they appealed to the authorities, when they appealed to the police and so on, nothing whatever happened. Now, I don't want to talk this afternoon, particularly about the perpetrators. That's not what good reason for that, but I don't for the moment want to talk about the perpetrators. It's sufficient to say this, that our politically correct class have refused to name the issue. They refer to the perpetrators as men, or at very best they refer to them as Asian men, as if the Chinese or the Japanese were involved in doing this sort of thing. I would commend to you, and this is all I'm going to say on this, I would commend to you a report produced by some very courageous Muslims in the Quilliam Foundation. They have done their own research, and they were quite shocked by their own research, and I honour them for following the facts where it is. And they said quite clearly that overwhelmingly, the perpetrators are from Pakistani and Muslim background. And they traced a major part of the influence back to the Islamic faith and to Muhammad himself. They said in here, it's on page 37, if you don't believe me, it's right here. They say on page 37, they say trace it back through the Pakistani culture, and where in Pakistan they believe in child brides, which they trace back to Muhammad himself. I'm going to say no more, except we need to name the problem as it really is. We have deluded people. And we have not properly warned our children about what's going on because we would not name the problem. But the main bulk of what I want to say this afternoon is this. I'm as equally angry with the authorities up and down the country, in Rochdale and Rotherham and Telford and Oxford and Newcastle and everywhere else, that have known for decades that this was happening in their area. They have known it and they have done nothing about it. If you doubt me, I really suggest you read a really good book. It's called Broken and Betrayed by Jane Senior, who was a courageous whistleblower in Rotherham. Read her book. She provided Rotherham with names, car registration numbers, addresses where the raping is taking place. Provided all the information, the links between all the different grooming gangs. She provided all the information both to South Yorkshire Police and to Rotherham Council, and they did nothing. And indeed, they said to her, don't refer to them as Asian men. This has been happening up and down the country. If you read the report, if you read the Spicer report on what's happened in Newcastle, they make it clear that not only has it happened, they say it's happening in every town and city up and down the country. I don't mind whether you live in Cornwall or whether you live in leafy Surrey. It's happening somewhere near you, and it's happening today. That's the official report. Read the Spicer report. But my anger is not only against the perpetrators, I say, my anger is against those authorities. Those authorities who have done nothing. Why have they done nothing? Firstly, because they're politically correct. Oh, what a lot we have to blame on political correctness. These girls have suffered because these authorities would not tackle the problem because they didn't want to be thought to be racist or against a particular minority. They were bought into political correctness. How foul that is, that all these girls suffer because of that. And another reason, particularly with the Labour Party, who runs so many of these boroughs up and down the country, is of course they didn't want to upset a major voting bloc in their own making. How many of the people in these local authorities have been sacked? How many have been prosecuted? How many do you find in jail? They have failed on their duty of care towards our children, for which they're responsible, and nothing has happened. Where is the justice? And where is the justice on behalf of the children who themselves, many of them, their families and so on, appealed to these authorities, which did nothing? Where is their justice? Now, my contention, and you can see it in the party conference, in the party manifesto, is we need, as UKIP, we need to tackle this problem. But I need to say that since I took on my responsibility for this, some people have questioned and doubted this. The first thing I got was, careful, Alan, careful. Look what happened to Jane Collins when she took on the Labour Party in Rotherham. I want to honour Jane Collins. I really want to honour the guts and the courage of that woman. She's not here now. Mistakes were made, there's no two ways about it. Mistakes were made, bad decisions were taken around it and so on. But she had the courage to begin to name what the real problem is. We need to learn a lesson from that, but not be cowed by it. And we need to give her due honour for being willing to do so. Secondly, I was told, don't touch this issue, Alan. We can't touch this issue. You're going to have a horrendous time in the media. They're going to call you racist, far-right, bigot, Islamophobic, extremist, and so on. Well, UKIP is well used to all this. We've always been hammered for being such things. It's never been true, but we've always been hammered for it. Can I just tell you a story? I hope I have time for this, please. Last Saturday, I was in Sunderland with Gerard Batten. I had approached him, and we went up there. We went there to join a march. We joined the march, 1 o'clock, in the middle, at the edges of Sunderland, and there were probably 1,500 or 2,000 people on this march. It was an extraordinarily respectful march, okay? We walked silently. We were led by local women, Sunderland women, who were protesting against rapes that had been happening and demanding more police and more security cameras in the centre of Sunderland. We marched down, we stopped, it was a silent march, no shouting, no banners, just the Union Jack. We marched down, 1,500, 2,000, right through the middle. We stopped at the 2-minute silence at the War Memorial. We marched right the way through the middle of Sunderland. Sometimes we stopped and people on the side were clapping as we went through. We marched through and then we came through, and in one particular corner, the police had placed all the hard left, Antifas and all that, who were shouting and hollering and hoovering, and shouting at us and bellowing at us. And frankly, some morons on our side were provoked by it and they went over and started a fracas. The fracas, I was there, the fracas lasted for 3 minutes, okay, 3 minutes. Let's be generous, let's say it lasted for 4 minutes. I saw it. The police moved in, they were very good about the whole, they dealt with our morons on our side who shouldn't have done that. And the stewards have, and we carried on with the march, and then we had speeches, including Gerard's excellent speech at a meeting place. A 4-hour, respectful, quiet march and event, marred by 3 minutes of violence. Sky News tell us that they're the only media outlet that were there. Sky News had headlined "Anti-Muslim March by Violent Racists." That was the line they had. I have to say to you, I don't know. It is such an abdication of professional objectivity by Sky News. They had their agenda. They went to Gerard before it started and said, what about all the racists who are going to be on the march? Before the thing even started, they had their agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, when we have such shameful mainstream media, such irresponsible shameful media, that do not attempt to put the story, that want to get their own agenda, I think we don't bow down to them whatsoever. We ignore them. The red light's come on, so I better start winding up. But can I just say, not only that, but let's get this clear. The mainstream media are part of the problem. The mainstream media do not want to know why the women of Sunderland want more police on the streets and more security cameras and so on because of the rape that takes place. No, what they're interested in doing is dismissing everybody, including Gerard, as a racist and a bigot and the rest of it. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got more to say, but I'll stop there. We as UKIP have a choice. In my view, this is an issue made in hell, literally made in hell, but it's an issue that only UKIP can and will run with. It's an issue. Either we can cow down and say, well, we really don't want to get a bad press, we really don't want Sky News to say bad things about us, or indeed the BBC or whatever. We don't want to be called racists and bigots and far-right and all the rest of it. Either we can bow down towards that and just shrink off into a corner, or we can say, it was ever thus, and we are UKIP. We do not mind. We have right on our side. We have justice for the victims on our side. We have a real political opportunity to knock Labour councillors out in towns up and down the country, Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, and so on and so forth. And the elections are coming round next May. This is something made for UKIP. We are the only ones who have the guts. We are the only ones that don't give in to political correctness. Let's up an atom and make the difference that needs to be made on behalf of these girls. Thank you very much, and God bless you.